If you've ever stared at a blank page waiting for a good idea to appear, you're not alone. Many of us believe creativity is a rare spark, something you either have or you don't. We're told that inspiration comes and goes, and that truly creative people are just born different. But what if that isn't true? What if anyone could learn to have new, useful ideas every single day? Infinite Ideas was written for people who want to take control of their creativity. Instead of waiting and hoping for your next big idea, this book shows you how to build habits and routines that make new ideas happen on purpose. You don't need to be a genius or have special talents. All you need are the right tools and a willingness to practice. Inside these pages, you'll find step-by-step methods for coming up with dozens of ideas each day, even when you're busy or tired. You'll learn simple ways to combine old ideas into new ones, techniques for turning random thoughts into real projects, and ways to build your confidence, especially if you've ever doubted your creative abilities. The approach in this book is practical. It's not about waiting for inspiration or hoping for a eureka moment. Instead, it's about using small, repeatable steps that anyone can follow and watching as they add up over time. By the end, you'll have a personal system for generating ideas whenever you need them and the confidence to keep going, even when it's hard. Creativity isn't magic. It's something you can practice, improve, and rely on. My hope is that by using what's in this book, you'll stop worrying about your next big idea and start making it happen. Let's get started. Idea crisis. The blank page stares back. You've been here before, cursor blinking, deadline looming, mind circling the same tired territory. You tell yourself it's temporary. You tell yourself inspiration will strike. You tell yourself you're just not feeling it today. But deep down you know the truth. This isn't a dry spell. It's a design flaw. You're not stuck because you're empty. You're stuck because your system is empty. This chapter names the real enemy. Not laziness, not lack of talent, not the wrong tools or the wrong timing. The enemy is the myth that creativity arrives on its own schedule, that genius waits for lightning, that the muse decides when you're worthy. That myth has cost you weeks, months, maybe years of output. It's time to kill it. The inspiration trap. Here's what waiting for motivation actually does. It delays output and shrinks opportunity windows. While you're waiting to feel ready, someone else ships. While you're polishing the perfect opening line, the conversation moves on. While you're hoping for clarity, the market shifts, the trend fades, the door closes. Emotion-led filtering makes it worse. You generate a rough idea, something raw, something ugly, and your inner critic murders it before it can breathe. You mistake polish for quality. You confuse comfort for correctness. You kill promising, ugly first ideas because they don't feel like winners yet. But here's the truth. Most breakthroughs look terrible at first. The diamond starts as compressed carbon. The sculpture starts as a block of stone. Your job isn't to birth perfection. It's to birth volume and let structure do the rest. And then there's talent worship, the most insidious trap of all. When you externalize control to some mystical gift, you surrender agency. You say, I'm just not naturally creative, and you hand your future to chance. Systems restore control. Systems say, creativity isn't a gift, it's a process, and processes can be engineered, measured, and improved. The bottleneck stack. Let's diagnose where you're actually stuck. 5 bottlenecks strangle most creators, and you probably recognize at least 3. Low attempt volume. You're rolling the dice too few times. Creativity follows probability. More attempts equal higher odds of hitting outliers. But you're producing 5 ideas a week when you should be producing 50. You're treating each idea like a precious artifact instead of a cheap experiment. Volume isn't about lowering standards. It's about raising the sample size so the math works in your favor. Narrow search space. You keep pulling from the same inputs, so you keep getting the same outputs. Same sources, same metaphors, same formats, same audience. You're mining a vein that's been tapped dry. Recombination requires variety. If you feed the system stale ingredients, you get stale results. Late, biased curation. You have no early-stage gates, no clear criteria, no disciplined filtering. You either keep everything, drowning in clutter, or kill everything, starving your pipeline. You confuse taste with judgment. You let mood decide what's worth pursuing. Without structure, you can't separate signal from noise, and the few gems you do produce get buried under the rubble. Add it up: low volume, narrow inputs, sloppy curation. That's not a creativity problem, that's a systems problem. Evidence you're stuck. You know you're stuck when you see these patterns. Repeating formats, stale metaphors, feedback that says solid but predictable. You're recycling the same structures because you haven't built new ones. Your work feels safe because it is safe, and safe doesn't break through. Long gaps between good ideas. High anxiety every time you start. You dread the blank page because you have no reliable way to fill it. Each session feels like gambling. Sometimes you win, mostly you don't. And the longer the gap, the heavier the pressure, the worse the paralysis. Projects balloon. Shipping becomes rare and scary. You start strong, then scope creeps, then doubt creeps, then you're 6 months in with nothing to show. You confuse working on it with progress. You confuse motion with momentum. And every unfinished project whispers the same lie: maybe you're just not good enough. The cost of doing nothing. If you don't fix this, stagnation compounds. Missed asymmetric opportunities. Others publish while you polish. They build audiences, land clients, open doors, while you're still figuring it out. The gap widens, the window closes, and you tell yourself it wasn't the right time anyway. Loss of confidence. Learned helplessness toward ideation. You stop trusting yourself to generate on demand. You start believing creativity is something that happens to you, not something you do. And that belief becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Career drift. Reactive work replaces original work. You take the safe gigs, the predictable projects, the stuff that pays but doesn't build. You become a pair of hands instead of a source of ideas. And the longer you drift, the harder it is to steer back. The cost to credibility is just as brutal. Peers stop bringing you into early rooms. They want people who ship, who contribute, who move fast. Audience attrition from predictability and silence. They came for fresh thinking. They leave when you go quiet or repetitive. The one-hit perception hardens. Doors quietly close, and you're left wondering what happened. What this book delivers. Here's the promise: a repeatable pipeline that yields endless useful ideas on demand. First time through, you'll build an idea engine. Produce 20 to 50 titled ideas per day using sprints. Consistently shortlist 3 to 5 per week for development. Ship 1 prototype per week without burnout. You'll install simple metrics. Track attempts, combinations, time, balance. Weekly review, hit rate, and stage gate pass-through. Use numbers to steer, not to punish. Over time, if you keep running the system, compounding mastery kicks in. 100 plus ideas per day capacity during focused seasons. Monthly flagship releases. Quarterly signature works. A rising, measurable hit rate and inbound opportunities. Reputation effects, known for reliability and originality, a rare combo. Better collaborators, faster approvals, bigger bets. Optionality, you choose projects, you don't chase them. The 8-part stack. This book is built on 8 interlocking mechanisms. Each one amplifies the others. Skip one and the system wobbles. Master all 8 and you become unstoppable. The formula gives you the levers: attempts, combinations, time, balance, so you know exactly what to adjust. Volume power raises attempts safely, turning scarcity into abundance. Smart Remix multiplies combinations, teaching you to recombine primitives into exponential variety. Edge Loop balances explore and exploit, so you find breakthroughs without drifting. Useful Limits designs constraints that accelerate decisions and sharpen your voice. Idea Networks expands your search space, connecting distant clusters for outlier concepts. Sharp Curation surfaces the head of the curve, separating signal from noise fast. Go Infinite sustains and scales, locking habits so momentum compounds. Why this order? Formula clarifies cause and effect before action. Volume without recombination stalls. Recombination without volume starves. Exploration without constraints diffuses. Constraints without exploration calcify. Networks widen options. Curation makes choices. Integration locks habits. Consistency beats intensity. Winners and losers. Winners run systems over superstition. They ship over showboat. They test, tally, iterate. They protect momentum, not ego. They invite feedback, cut fast, double down on data. They treat creativity like engineering, controllable, measurable, improvable. Losers wait, wish, whine. They defend drafts like heirlooms. They blame the market, the algorithm, the timing. They confuse activity with progress. They confuse taste with output. They worship the muse and wonder why she never shows. Which one are you? The system exists. The levers are real. The math works. But none of it matters if you don't act. In the next chapter, you'll build your personal dashboard, the 4 numbers that translate creativity from mystery into mechanics. You'll learn to measure what matters, adjust what's broken, and steer by data instead of hope. The formula is waiting. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to grow to the top and activate notifications to receive more self-improvement tips that will supercharge your growth. And make sure to give this video a thumbs up and share it with your friends. It really helps the channel grow. Thank you for your support. Chapter 2, the formula. You want control. You want predictability. You want to stop gambling every time you sit down to create. Good, because creativity isn't magic, it's math. And once you see the equation, you can engineer the outcome. Most people treat ideas like weather, unpredictable, uncontrollable, something that happens to them. They wait, they hope, they pray to the muse, and when nothing comes, they shrug and say, I guess I'm just not inspired today. But what if I told you that your creative output follows a formula as reliable as compound interest? What if the difference between drought and abundance is just 4 numbers? Here's the truth. You can't scale what you can't measure. You can't improve what you can't see. And you can't steer what you won't quantify. This chapter gives you the dashboard, the 4 levers that control your entire creative engine. Learn to read them, adjust them, and watch your output multiply. Why numbers don't kill art. Let's kill the myths first, because they're strangling you. Quality over quantity. You've heard it 1,000 times. It sounds wise. It feels safe. It's also a false dichotomy. Quality doesn't replace quantity. It emerges from it. The best ideas don't arrive fully formed. They evolve through iteration, through volume, through the relentless production of options you can later refine. Picasso didn't paint one masterpiece. He painted thousands of works, and a handful became legendary. Edison didn't file one patent. He filed over 1,000, and a few changed the world. Volume creates the stage on which quality appears. You can't curate what you haven't created. Metrics kill art. This one's even worse. It confuses measurement with constraint. Tracking your attempts doesn't cage your creativity. It liberates it. When you know your numbers, you stop second-guessing. You stop wondering if you're doing enough. You stop letting mood dictate momentum. Numbers calm nerves. Systems beat moods. The artist who tracks output ships more, experiments more, and discovers more than the one who floats on feeling alone. Genius can't be engineered. History disagrees. Every prolific creator, from Bach to Hemingway to modern content machines, ran systems. They had routines, quotas, structures. They didn't wait for lightning. They built generators. And you can too. The 4 levers. Here's the formula. Ideas out, attempts, combinations, time, balance. 4 variables. 4 levers you can pull. 4 numbers that translate the abstract into the actionable. Let's break them down. Attempts is the raw count. How many ideas did you produce today? Not polished, not perfect, just titled, 1-sentence concepts you can later sort and score. This is your volume lever. More attempts mean more rolls of the dice, higher odds of hitting outliers. Start at 30 per day. That's 3 15-minute sprints, 10 ideas each. Doable, repeatable, scalable. Combinations measures how often you're remixing instead of repeating. Are you pulling from the same tired well, or are you cross-pollinating? At least 50% of your ideas should recombine defined primitives, themes, mechanisms, audiences, formats you've cataloged and can deliberately mix. This lever multiplies variety without adding time. You're not inventing from scratch, you're assembling from parts. And assembly scales. Time is the protected block. 90 minutes per day, same slot, same place, non-negotiable. This isn't whenever you feel like it. This is a standing appointment with your future self. Consistency compounds. The brain learns to fire on schedule. Warm-up time shrinks. Output per hour rises. Time is the foundation. Without it, the other levers spin in the void. Balance governs your exploration-exploitation ratio. 60% of your week should be wild, wide search, new domains, fresh metaphors, untested formats. 40% should be focused refinement, deepening the top 10%, developing prototypes, shipping. Too much exploration and you drift. Too much exploitation and you calcify. Balance keeps you moving forward without losing novelty. 4 levers. Adjust any one and the output shifts. Adjust all 4, and you're not hoping for ideas, you're manufacturing them. Building your dashboard. Translation time. How do you turn this formula into something you can actually run? Start with baselines. Write these 4 numbers on a card and keep it visible. 30 attempts per day, 50% recombination minimum, 90 protected minutes, 60-40 explore-exploit split. These aren't aspirations. These are your starting settings. You'll adjust them later, but you need a floor to stand on first. Daily, you log counts. How many ideas did you produce? Tag the top 10%, the ones that spark something, the ones worth a second look. Don't judge them to death, just mark them. This takes 2 minutes. Do it at the end of each session, not during. Generation and curation are separate modes. Mix them and you kill momentum. Weekly, you compute hit rate. Of the ideas you tagged, how many actually moved forward? How many became prototypes, drafts, or shipped pieces? This number tells you if your filters are working. If nothing's moving, your curation is too tight or your attempts are too shallow. Adjust balance by plus or minus 10%. If you're stuck, raise exploration. If you're scattered, raise exploitation. Small tweaks, big effects. Monthly, you raise the floor. Increase attempts or combinations by 10 to 20%. The system should get easier, not harder. As your prompts sharpen and your primitives expand, the same 90 minutes yields more output. You're climbing a slope that gets less steep, the hallmark of a well-designed system. Here's a quick exercise you can run right now. Write your 4 numbers on a card: attempts, combinations, time, balance. Keep it where you'll see it every session. End each session mid-idea, literally stop in the middle of a sentence. This makes restarting tomorrow effortless. Your brain knows exactly where to pick up. And define idea in 1 sentence to avoid inflation. An idea isn't a vague notion or a fleeting thought. It's a title plus a 1-sentence concept you can evaluate and develop. Precision prevents drift. Making it stick. Tricks matter. Use a visible counter app or tally marks on paper, something you can see accumulate in real time. The visual feedback reinforces the behavior. Batch your prompts before sessions. Write them on cards or in a doc so you're not hunting for inspiration mid-sprint. This reduces warm-up time and keeps energy high, and build in micro-rewards after finishing your daily quota. A walk, a coffee, a 5-minute break, something that signals completion and reinforces the loop. What happens when you run this system? Good looks like 20 ideas per day, 1 promising idea per week, consistent logs, and lower anxiety starting sessions. You stop dreading the blank page because you have a process that fills it. Excellent looks like 40 per day, 1 standout every 3 to 4 days, and clear signals for what to develop next. You're not guessing anymore. The data tells you where to focus. Best looks like 80 to 100 per day, 1 standout per day, a portfolio that's always moving, and external traction that's measurably increasing. You become the person others come to for fresh thinking because you ship relentlessly and your hit rate keeps climbing. When the system wobbles. What can go wrong? Overtracking paralysis. You start measuring everything: word counts, session duration, idea categories, subcategories, tags, metadata, and the overhead kills the output. Fix. Track only 4 numbers, nothing else. The formula is simple for a reason. Inflated counts. You start calling every fleeting thought an idea to hit your quota. Your numbers look good, but your quality tanks. Fix. Define idea as title plus 1-sentence concept. If you can't write it down in that format, it doesn't count. Balance drift. You say you're doing 60-40, but you're actually doing 90-10 or 20-80. You're either wandering without shipping or grinding without discovering. Fix. Use timers for explore and exploit blocks. Label them, track them, adjust weekly based on evidence, not mood. Data without decisions. You log everything, review nothing, change nothing. The dashboard becomes decoration. Fix. Pre-commit weekly adjustments. Every Sunday, look at your hit rate and your balance. Decide one thing to shift by 10%. Write it down. Do it. The formula works. The levers are real. The math is on your side. But none of it matters if you don't run the system. You now have the dashboard. You know the 4 numbers. You understand the levers. What you don't yet have is the engine that fills those numbers. The mechanism that turns 30 attempts into 30 titled, usable ideas without burning you out or boring you to death. That's next, and it's simpler than you think. Chapter 3, Volume Power. 30 ideas, today, not this week, not when inspiration strikes, today. Sounds impossible, right? That's because you've been taught to treat every idea like a fragile artifact. Something precious, something rare, something that requires the perfect mood and the perfect moment. But what if I told you that scarcity is a choice? What if the difference between 10 ideas a month and 30 ideas a day is just a timer and a willingness to produce garbage? Volume isn't about lowering standards, it's about raising the odds. And the odds are simple. You can't select a masterpiece you never produced. You can't refine what doesn't exist. You can't curate an empty shelf. This chapter teaches you to fill the shelf, fast, deliberately, and without apology. Why speed wins? Here's what most people miss. Volume reveals patterns you can't see at low sample sizes. When you produce 5 ideas, you're guessing. When you produce 50, you're learning. You start to notice what works, what clicks, what sparks something in you or your audience. You see themes emerge. You spot combinations that repeat because they're actually good, not just familiar. You build a data set you can analyze, adjust, and improve. Speed breaks perfectionism's spell. The inner critic thrives on time. Give it an hour to polish one idea, and it will murder that idea with 1,000 cuts. Give it 90 seconds, and it doesn't have time to interfere. Speed forces you past hesitation. It disarms the judge. It turns creation into a reflex instead of a ritual. And here's the kicker. Speed often enhances originality, not ruins it. When you're moving fast, you don't have time to self-censor. You don't have time to reach for the safe metaphor or the predictable angle. You grab whatever's closest, whatever's weird, whatever pops into your head first. And that raw, unfiltered output, that's where surprise lives. The lies you've been told. Let's dismantle the myths that keep you stuck at low volume. More ideas equals more junk. False. More ideas equals more options, and more options means better curation. Yes, most of what you produce will be average. That's not a bug, it's a feature. The average ideas are the substrate. They're the soil from which the standouts grow. And you can't grow anything in empty ground. Produce volume, then curate ruthlessly. The junk doesn't hurt you, it hides you from nothing. High volume burns you out. Wrong structure burns you out. Grinding for 8 hours on one idea? That's exhausting. Running 3 15-minute sprints with clear start and stop signals? That's energizing. The difference is boundaries. When you know the sprint ends in 15 minutes, you can go all out. When you know judgment comes later, you can relax into generation. Structure protects energy. Chaos drains it. The truth is this. Volume is a skill, not a gift. And like any skill, it's trainable. You're not born with the ability to produce 30 ideas a day. You build it, one sprint at a time. The sprint architecture. Here's how you operationalize throughput. 3 sprints per day, 15 minutes each. 10 titled one-sentence ideas per sprint. Timer visible, no exceptions. Why 15 minutes? Because it's short enough to sustain intensity and long enough to produce results. Shorter, and you're still warming up. Longer, and focus drifts. 15 is the sweet spot. Just enough time to hit flow, not enough time to overthink. Why 10 ideas per sprint? Because it forces pace. If you're aiming for 3 ideas in 15 minutes, you'll polish. If you're aiming for 10, you'll produce. The quota creates urgency. Urgency kills hesitation, and hesitation is the enemy of volume. Each idea gets a title and a one-sentence concept. That's it. No paragraphs, no outlines. No, let me just flesh this out a bit. Title plus sentence. This format keeps ideas portable, comparable, and fast. You can generate 10 in the time it takes to draft one full concept. And portability matters. You can move these ideas between lists, combine them, score them, develop them later, but only if they're captured cleanly. No judging mid-sprint. This is non-negotiable. The moment you start evaluating, you stop generating. The critic and the creator can't occupy the same mental space, so you lock the door on judgment. You produce, you log, you move on. Tagging happens after the sprint ends, never during. Prompt engineering for speed. Prompts are the fuel. Rotate them to avoid repetition and keep energy high. Start with audience prompts. Who is this idea for? Beginners, experts, skeptics, enthusiasts? Naming the audience narrows the search space and triggers specific angles. One sprint for beginners yields different ideas than one sprint for experts. Same topic, different lens. Switch to medium prompts. What format could this take? A tweet thread, a video script, a workshop, a diagram, a metaphor. Medium shapes message. Forcing yourself to think in different containers unlocks different structures. Add constraint prompts. What if you had to explain this in 10 words? What if you couldn't use the most obvious example? What if you had to invert the standard advice? Constraints force substitution, and substitution breeds novelty. End with metaphor prompts. What does this concept behave like? An ecosystem, a game, a machine, a journey. Analogies reveal hidden structure and generate fresh angles you wouldn't find through direct thinking. And here's the secret weapon, bad on purpose rounds. Once a week, run a sprint where the goal is to produce the worst ideas possible. Deliberately terrible, aggressively stupid. This disarms the critic completely. You can't fail at trying to fail. And paradoxically, some of your worst ideas will contain seeds of brilliance because you're exploring territory you'd normally avoid. Finish each session with an odd combo prompt. Take two unrelated primitives and force a collision. Productivity meets jazz. Leadership meets gardening. Marketing meets physics. The weirder the pairing, the better. Odd combos bypass habitual thinking and land you in surprising territory. Running your first sprint. Let's make this concrete. Grab 4 index cards or open a blank doc. Write one prompt on each card. Audience, medium, constraint, metaphor. Pick one. Set a visible 15-minute countdown. Phone timer, kitchen timer, whatever's in front of you. Hit start. Produce 10 ideas. Title plus 1 sentence each. Don't stop to polish. Don't stop to judge. Don't stop to wonder if it's good. Just produce. When the timer hits 0, stop. Even if you're mid-sentence. Especially if you're mid-sentence. Stopping mid-idea makes restarting tomorrow effortless. Your brain knows exactly where to pick up. Now tag your top 2, not your top 5, not the ones that might work, your top 2, the ones that sparked something, the ones you'd actually want to develop. Write a small star or highlight them. That's it, you're done. 45 minutes total for 3 sprints, 30 ideas, 6 tagged candidates. Repeat tomorrow. Making volume sustainable. Tricks matter. Name every idea. Titles make ideas portable and memorable. Untitled Idea 7 disappears. The reverse mentor framework sticks. Names give you handles to grab, compare, and recombine later. Use a standing posture for your last sprint of the day. Physical state shifts mental state. Standing raises energy and signals urgency. It's harder to drift when you're on your feet. Keep a repeat offender list. Track ideas that keep showing up across sprints. If the same concept appears 3 times, it's either worth developing or worth banning. Either promote it to your shortlist or add it to a forbidden list so you stop recycling it unconsciously. Batch your prompts before sessions. Don't hunt for inspiration mid-sprint. Decide your 4 prompts in advance. Write them down, keep them visible. This reduces warm-up time and keeps momentum high. Build in micro-rewards after hitting your daily quota. A 5-minute walk, a stretch, a song, something that signals completion and reinforces the loop. The brain learns, finish the quota, get the reward, repeat. What success looks like. Good looks like 30 ideas per day, a weekly shortlist of 5, lower resistance, and faster starts. You stop dreading sessions because you have a process that works. The blank page doesn't scare you anymore. Excellent looks like 60 per day, 2 prototypes per week, and a clear sense of themes worth pursuing. You're not just producing, you're learning. You see patterns. You know what to double down on. Best looks like 100 per day, one prototype per day, and a monthly flagship project with measurable traction. You've built a machine. Ideas flow on demand. Your portfolio is always moving. External signals, engagement, feedback, opportunities start climbing. When the wheels come off, idea repeats. You're producing volume, but it's the same idea in 10 different outfits. Fix. Rotate prompts aggressively. Log categories. Add a forbidden list. Force yourself into new territory. Fatigue. 3 sprints feel like a grind. Fix. Shorten sprints to 10 minutes. Add breaks between them. Alternate domains. 1 sprint on work topics, 1 on personal projects, 1 on wild experiments. Perfectionism creeps back in. You're spending 5 minutes on one idea instead of producing 10. Fix. Enforce the 1-sentence rule. Use ugly first rounds. Set a pace you can't polish at, 1 idea every 90 seconds. Premature curation. You're judging mid-sprint, killing ideas before they're born. Fix. Schedule curation for later. Lock the sprint door on judgment. Physically separate generation time from evaluation time. Volume works. The math is on your side. The more you produce, the higher your odds of hitting outliers. But raw volume alone isn't enough. You need variety. You need recombination. You need a way to multiply your attempts without multiplying your effort. That's where the next piece comes in, and it's the difference between producing 100 similar ideas and producing 100 genuinely different ones. Chapter 4, Smart Remix. You're producing volume now, 30 ideas a day, maybe more. But here's the problem. They're starting to sound the same. Same angles, same metaphors, same structures wearing different clothes. You've hit the wall that volume alone can't break through. What you need isn't more effort, it's more ingredients. And more importantly, you need a system for mixing those ingredients in ways that feel fresh, not forced. That's what this chapter delivers, the architecture of recombination, the rules that turn a handful of building blocks into infinite variety. Here's the secret most creators miss. Originality isn't about inventing from nothing. It's about combining what already exists in ways no one else has tried. When you can recombine, you never run out. When you master remix, speed doesn't sacrifice surprise, it amplifies it. Why recombination beats invention? Think about language, 26 letters, finite, fixed. Yet those 26 letters generate every book ever written, every song ever sung, every conversation ever had. The alphabet doesn't change, the combinations do. That's the power of recombination. A small set of primitives arranged by consistent rules yields near infinite outputs. Creativity works the same way. You don't need 1,000 unique ideas. You need 7 solid primitives and a method for mixing them. Reuse accelerates speed without killing novelty. You're not starting from scratch every time. You're assembling from parts, and assembly scales in ways invention never can. Over time, remix develops a distinctive signature. The way you combine becomes recognizable. Your patterns emerge. People start to notice, that's a very you idea. Not because you're repeating yourself, but because your recombination rules are consistent enough to create coherence and varied enough to stay interesting. That's the sweet spot, and it's engineered, not accidental. The lies that keep you stuck. Let's kill the myths that make you afraid to recombine. Remix is theft. This one's everywhere, and it's poison. Remix isn't theft, it's how culture evolves. Every idea you've ever had builds on something you've seen, read, or experienced. The question isn't whether you're remixing. You are, always. It's whether you're doing it deliberately or accidentally. Deliberate remix is transparent, structured, and generative. Accidental remix is unconscious plagiarism. Choose the former. Templates kill creativity. False. Templates amplify creativity by removing low-value decisions. When you have a structure to fill, you can focus energy on the high-value choices, the twist, the metaphor, the unexpected pairing. Templates don't cage you. They free you from reinventing the wheel every time you sit down to create. Analogy is superficial. This one misunderstands how analogy works. Surface-level analogy is superficial. Leadership is like a ship, tells you nothing. But structural analogy, Mapping roles, flows, constraints, feedback loops reveals deep patterns you can transfer across domains. That's not decoration, that's insight. The truth is this: recombination is a skill, and like volume, it's trainable. You build a library of primitives, learn the rules for mixing them, and practice until the process becomes automatic. Building your primitive library. Start by defining your building blocks. Choose 5 to 7 primitives, the core dimensions you'll mix and match. Here's a solid starting set: audience, problem, mechanism, medium, tone, constraint, payoff. Audience. Who is this for? Name them specifically. Not everyone. Not people interested in productivity. Try burned-out managers, first-time founders, skeptical academics. Specificity narrows the search space and triggers sharper angles. Problem. What pain are you addressing? Again, specificity wins, not stress. Try the paralysis of too many good options or the guilt of saying no to opportunities. Narrow problems unlock narrow solutions, and narrow solutions feel fresh. Mechanism. How does the solution work? Is it a mental model, a ritual, a reframe, a tool, a question? Naming the mechanism helps you see when you're repeating yourself and when you're genuinely exploring new territory. Medium. What container does this idea live in? A thread, a diagram, a workshop exercise, a one-liner, a framework? Medium shapes message. Forcing the same idea into different containers reveals different facets. Tone. What's the emotional flavor? Urgent, playful, skeptical, reverent, irreverent? Tone shifts how the idea lands. The same concept delivered with urgency versus humor creates two entirely different experiences. Constraint. What's the deliberate limitation? One metaphor only, no jargon. Explain in 10 words, must invert conventional wisdom. Constraints force substitution, and substitution breeds novelty. Payoff. What does the reader walk away with? A reframe, a tool, a question, a permission slip, a challenge. Naming the payoff keeps you honest about whether the idea actually delivers value. Name each primitive clearly. Keep examples. Write them on cards or in a doc you can reference during sprints. This library becomes your palette, the colors you'll mix to create every idea that follows. The morphological grid. Here's where it gets tactical. Create a 4x4 matrix. Pick 4 primitives. Fill each row with 4 options per dimension. You now have 16 possible combinations. Let's say you pick audience, problem, mechanism, and tone. Row 1, 4 audiences. Row 2, 4 problems. Row 3, 4 mechanisms. Row 4, 4 tones. Draw one option from each row. Title the resulting combo. Repeat until you've generated 16 ideas. Keep the top 3. Why does this work? Because it forces cross-dimension mixing. You escape habitual pairings. You wouldn't naturally combine skeptical academics with playful tone and ritual mechanism, but the grid makes you try it. And that collision, that's where surprise lives. The grid also prevents combinatorial explosion. You could theoretically mix 7 primitives in thousands of ways, but that's paralyzing. A 4x4 grid gives you 16 options, enough variety to explore, few enough to evaluate. Constraints, again, are catalysts. Generative rules, the remix engine. Grids give you combinations, rules give you transformations. Here are 4 simple operations you can apply to any idea. Swap, merge, invert, scale. Swap means exchange one primitive for another. Take an idea aimed at beginners and swap the audience to experts. Take a playful tone and swap it for urgent. Same core concept, different lens. Swapping reveals what's essential and what's cosmetic. Merge means blend 2 ideas into one. Take decision fatigue and information overload and merge them into the paradox of infinite choice. Take 2 mechanisms, ritual and reframe, and merge them into a single practice. Merging creates density and often uncovers hidden connections. Invert means flip the assumption. If the standard advice is do more, invert it to do less. If the conventional wisdom is plan everything, invert it to plan nothing. Inversion forces you into contrarian territory, and contrarian ideas cut through noise. Scale means expand or shrink the scope. Take a personal habit and scale it to a team ritual. Take an organizational strategy and scale it down to a daily practice. Scaling reveals whether an idea holds at different magnitudes and often uncovers applications you'd never see at the original scale. Run each idea through at least 2 rules. Start with the grid combo, Then apply merge and invert, or swap and scale. The sequence doesn't matter, the transformation does. Each pass generates a variant. Each variant is a new titled idea you can evaluate, develop, or discard. Analogical transfer, the long jump. Analogy is your secret weapon for outlier ideas, but not surface analogy, structural analogy. You're not looking for leadership is like a ship fluff. You're mapping deep patterns, roles, flows, constraints, feedback loops. Pick a source domain far from your topic: ecosystems, aviation, jazz, urban planning. The farther, the better. Now map the structure. In an ecosystem, what plays the role of producer, consumer, decomposer? What are the flows, energy, nutrients, information? What are the constraints, carrying capacity, competition, symbiosis? What are the feedback loops, population dynamics, resource depletion, adaptation? Now transfer that structure to your target domain. If you're thinking about team dynamics, who plays producer, consumer, decomposer? What flows matter? Ideas, decisions, feedback. What constraints shape behavior? Time, hierarchy, trust. What feedback loops drive outcomes? Recognition, accountability, learning. This isn't decoration, this is insight. Structural mapping reveals patterns you can't see when you stay inside one domain, and those patterns become the skeleton of genuinely fresh ideas. Produce 3 structural metaphors for each idea you want to develop. Write them as X behaves like Y because structural reason, not teams are like ecosystems, lazy. Try high-performing teams behave like mature ecosystems because both rely on specialized roles, efficient nutrient cycling, and resilience through diversity. Now you have something you can build on. Running the remix exercise. Let's make this concrete. Pick 5 primitives from your library. Write them on separate cards. Draw 2 at random. Apply merge. Blend them into a single concept. Apply invert. Flip 1 core assumption. Write 3 titled variants. Choose the strongest. Add a far-field analogy using structural mapping. Retitle based on the new frame. You just produced 3 ideas in under 10 minutes, and at least one of them is probably more interesting than anything you generate by staring at a blank page. That's the power of structure. You're not hoping for inspiration, you're engineering recombination. Making remix sustainable. Keep a metaphor bank. Every time you encounter a compelling analogy in a book, a conversation, a documentary, add it to the bank. Label it with the source domain and the key structural elements. Review weekly. Your bank becomes a reservoir you can draw from during sprints. Limit grids to 4x4. More dimensions sound appealing, but they create overload. 16 combos per session is the sweet spot. Enough to explore, few enough to evaluate. Use 1 unifying constraint per combo batch, a purpose sentence that ties the session together. All ideas must help burned-out managers reclaim agency. All ideas must challenge conventional productivity advice. The constraint keeps combos coherent instead of chaotic. Rotate your grammars monthly. Add 1 new primitive. Drop 1 that's gone stale. Swap merge for a new rule you invent. The system should evolve, not ossify. What mastery looks like. Good looks like 3 workable combos per day, clearer structure in your drafts, and 1 new angle adopted weekly. You're not just producing, you're learning to see patterns. Excellent looks like 10 combos per day, 1 prototype per week, and an emergent style. People start recognizing your work. Your recombination rules become your signature. Best looks like 20-plus combos per day, 1 standout per week, and a remix method collaborators actively request. You've built a system others want to copy. That's when you know you've mastered recombination. When remix goes wrong. Frankenstein ideas. You're combining everything, but nothing coheres. Fix. Add a unifying constraint. Write a 1-line purpose before you start mixing. Coherence comes from shared intent, not shared ingredients. Shallow analogies. You're using metaphors as decoration, not structure. Fix. Force structural mapping. Ask what plays what role until you hit the deep pattern. Overfitting templates. You're using the same grid, the same rules, the same primitives every session. Fix. Rotate grammars monthly. Add 1 new primitive. Invent a new transformation rule. Combinatorial explosion. You're generating 50 combos and evaluating none. Fix. Cap to 16 per session. Defer extras to a backlog. Volume without curation is noise. You now have the engine. You can produce volume. You can recombine at will. But here's the catch. Even the best recombination system will calcify if you don't know when to explore and when to exploit. The next chapter teaches you to toggle, to balance wild discovery with focused refinement so you never drift and never stagnate. And the mechanism is simpler than you think. Chapter 5, Edge Loop. You're producing volume. You're remixing smart. But here's the problem you haven't noticed yet. You're either wandering or grinding, never both. You spend 3 weeks exploring wild ideas and ship nothing. Or you lock onto one concept too early and miss the breakthrough, hiding 2 steps to the left. All explore with no ship wastes time. All exploit with no search kills surprise. What you need is a toggle, a disciplined way to switch between modes so you get novelty and progress, discovery and delivery, chaos and coherence. That's what this chapter builds, the loop that keeps you moving at the edge of chaos where the best ideas live. The edge isn't comfortable, it's not supposed to be. But it's where systems learn, where value emerges, where you escape the local maximum and find the global peak. And the mechanism for staying there? Simpler than you think. Why the toggle matters. Here's what most creators miss. Momentum compounds when switching rules are explicit. When you know what mode you're in, why you're in it, and when to switch, you stop second-guessing. You stop wondering if you should be exploring or refining. You stop letting mood decide. The rules decide, and rules scale. The loop preserves novelty while delivering progress. You don't have to choose between shipping and discovering. You do both, in sequence, with clear boundaries. Exploration feeds exploitation. Exploitation validates exploration. The loop creates a feedback cycle that tightens over time, raising both your hit rate and your speed. Without the loop, you drift. You chase shiny objects, you abandon promising ideas too early, or cling to dead ones too long. You confuse motion with momentum. The loop fixes that. It gives you a map, a compass, and a schedule. And once you internalize it, the toggle becomes automatic. The lies that keep you stuck. Let's dismantle the myths that make you afraid to structure your search. Follow your gut only. Intuition is powerful, but intuition without guardrails drifts. Your gut tells you what feels familiar, not what's actually novel. It pulls you toward comfort, not breakthrough. The loop doesn't replace intuition, it channels it. You still trust your instincts, but you test them against evidence and adjust based on results. You must have full clarity before starting. False. Clarity grows with motion, not before it. You don't figure out what works by thinking harder, you figure it out by trying faster. The loop formalizes trial and error, so you learn from every attempt instead of repeating the same mistakes. Pivoting means failure. This one's poison. Pivoting is adaptive search. It's how systems discover value under uncertainty. Sticking to a bad idea because you've already invested time? That's sunk cost fallacy. Switching to a better idea when the data says switch? That's intelligence. The truth is this: exploration and exploitation aren't opposites. They're partners, and the loop is how you choreograph their dance. The 3 temperatures. Think of your creative process as having 3 heat settings: hot, warm, and cool. Each temperature serves a different purpose. Each one has different rules, and knowing which one you're in changes everything. Hot is wild leaps, no constraints beyond time. The goal is diversity, not quality. You're sampling the ideal landscape as widely as possible, jumping between domains, formats, metaphors, audiences. You're not trying to land on the right answer. You're trying to see the full range of possibilities. Hot blocks generate raw material. They fill the funnel. They give you options you didn't know existed. Warm is guided search. You've narrowed the field. You've spotted a few promising clusters. Now you add one constraint, a specific audience, a specific problem, a specific mechanism, and you explore variations within that bounded space. Warm blocks turn vague directions into concrete hypotheses. They give you something you can test, refine, and develop. Cool is criteria-driven pruning. You've got candidates. Now you apply your filters: utility, surprise, feasibility. You cut the bottom half, you refine the top contenders, you turn rough concepts into shippable drafts. Cool blocks are where progress happens. They're where ideas become artifacts, prototypes, published work. The magic isn't in any one temperature. It's in the sequence. Hot generates options, warm clusters them, cool ships them, and the loop ensures you're always moving through all three, not getting stuck in one. Setting the base mix. Start with a 60-40 split. 60% of your weekly time in exploration, 40% in exploitation. That's your baseline. You'll adjust it later based on results, but you need a starting point. Exploration means new domains, new formats, new metaphors, rapid sampling, hot and warm blocks. You're widening the search space, testing hypotheses, collecting data. This is where novelty comes from. This is where you find the ideas you couldn't predict. Exploitation means deepening the top 10%, refining feasibility, cool blocks. You're taking the best candidates from exploration and turning them into something you can ship. This is where progress comes from. This is where you convert potential into results. Why 60-40? Because most people underexplore. They lock on to the first decent idea and grind it to death. They optimize locally and miss the global peak. A 60-40 split forces you to keep searching even when you've found something good. It protects you from premature convergence. But the split isn't fixed. It's a starting point. Every week, you'll look at your hit rate, how many ideas moved from warm to cool, from cool to shipped, and you'll adjust. If nothing's moving, raise exploration by 10%. If you're drowning in options but shipping nothing, raise exploitation by 10%. Small tweaks, big effects. The temperature protocol in action. Here's how you run the loop day to day. Label every session with a temperature, hot, warm, or cool. Write it at the top of the page. Set a timer. Follow the rules for that temperature. Hot sessions have no constraints beyond time. 15 minutes, 10 ideas, anything goes. The weirder, the better. You're not trying to be useful yet. You're trying to be surprising. End each hot block by bookmarking 3 seeds, ideas that sparked something, ideas you'd want to revisit in a warm pass. Don't develop them now, just mark them and move on. Warm sessions add one constraint. Pick an audience, a problem, a mechanism, a format. Now generate 10 variations within that bounded space. You're still exploring, but you're exploring with direction. The constraint keeps you from drifting while still allowing discovery. Every 10 ideas, nominate your top 2 for a cool pass. Again, don't refine them now, just tag them. Cool sessions are criteria-driven. Take your nominated ideas and score them. Utility, surprise, feasibility, 1 to 5 on each dimension. Cut anything below a total of 9. Take the survivors and refine them. Turn one-sentence concepts into titled drafts, outlines, prototypes. The goal is a shippable artifact by the end of the session. The sequence matters. You can't skip hot and go straight to cool. You'll have nothing to refine. You can't stay in hot forever. You'll drown in options. The loop forces you through all 3 temperatures in a rhythm that balances discovery and delivery. The reallocation rule. Every week you review. Look at your hit rate by stage. How many hot ideas became warm candidates? How many warm candidates became cool prototypes? How many cool prototypes shipped? If the numbers look good, ideas moving through the pipeline, prototypes shipping, traction building, keep the 60-40 split. If you're stuck, adjust. Shift 10% of your time toward the stage with the higher hit rate. If hot is producing great seeds, but warm is stalling, raise warm time. If warm is generating strong candidates, but cool is bottlenecked, raise cool time. And here's the emergency rule. If 2 weeks pass with 0 standouts, raise hot time by 20%. You're not exploring enough. You're grinding in a depleted vein. The system is telling you to widen the search. Listen. The reallocation rule keeps the loop adaptive. You're not locked into a fixed schedule. You're steering by data, adjusting based on evidence, optimizing for throughput and quality simultaneously. Making the loop stick. Tricks matter. Use separate playlists or environments per temperature. Hot sessions get chaotic music and a standing desk. Warm sessions get instrumental focus tracks and a clean workspace. Cool sessions get silence and a single open document. Physical and auditory cues anchor mental state. Your brain learns, this environment means this mode. Write a switch cue question and ask it at the start of every session. What would make this 10 times better? In hot mode, the answer is try something completely different. In warm mode, it's add one constraint and explore variations. In cool mode, it's cut half and refine the rest. The question keeps you aligned with the temperature's purpose. Batch by temperature. Don't mix hot and cool in the same session. The context switch cost kills momentum. Run 3 hot sprints in a row, then switch to warm, then switch to cool. Batching preserves energy and sharpens focus. What mastery looks like. Good looks like a weekly pivot that avoids dead ends and at least one idea advanced 2 stages. You're not stuck. You're not drifting. You're moving. Excellent looks like 2 promising tracks in parallel and 1 shipped piece per month with measurable engagement lift. You're not just producing, you're learning what works. The feedback loop is tightening. Best looks like a continuous pipeline across hot, warm, and cool. 1 shipped piece per week, rising hit rate quarter over quarter. You've built a machine. Ideas flow on demand. Quality climbs with volume, and the system runs itself. When the loop breaks. Endless wandering. You're spending all your time in hot, bookmarking seeds but never developing them. Fix. Timebox hot sessions. Require named hypotheses before moving to warm. Force yourself to commit. Premature lock-in. You're jumping from hot to cool, skipping warm entirely. You're refining the first decent idea instead of exploring alternatives. Fix. Demand 2 viable alternatives before commitment. Make yourself generate options before you choose. Data blindness. You're running the loop but ignoring the hit rate. You're adjusting based on mood, not evidence. Fix. Track hit rate by stage. Write it down. Adjust the mix on numbers, not feelings. Context switch cost. You're mixing temperatures in the same session, bouncing between hot and cool, never settling into a mode. Fix. Batch by temperature. 1 mode per session. Protect the boundaries. The loop works. The toggle is real. The edge is where value lives. But even the best loop will stall if you're searching an empty landscape. What you need next is a way to expand the terrain itself, to widen the search space so the loop has richer ground to explore. And the mechanism for that? It's hiding in plain sight. Chapter 6. Useful limits. Infinite choice sounds like freedom. It's not. It's paralysis. You sit down to create, and the possibilities sprawl in every direction. Any audience, any format, any angle, any tone. The blank page doesn't just stare back. It mocks you with its emptiness. And the more options you have, the harder it becomes to choose. Decision fatigue sets in before you've written a single word. Here's the paradox most creators never grasp. Constraints don't cage you. They catalyze you. The tighter the boundary, the sharper the solution. The clearer the limit, the faster the decision. And the more intentional your rules, the more distinctive your voice becomes. This chapter teaches you to weaponize scarcity, not the scarcity of time or talent, the scarcity of options. You'll learn to design limits you can love, boundaries that accelerate instead of suffocate, and rules that compound into a signature style others recognize and request. Why limits liberate? Let's start with what constraints actually do. They cut noise. When you eliminate 90% of the decision space, the remaining 10% becomes visible. You're not wandering through a forest anymore. You're walking a trail. The path is clear. The choice is obvious. And obvious choices happen fast. Constraints sharpen goals. Vague intentions like write something interesting or create engaging content produce vague results. But explain this concept in exactly 50 words or use only one metaphor for the entire piece. That's concrete. That's testable. That's something you can execute and evaluate. And here's the part that surprises people. Constraints encourage surprising routes. When you can't use the obvious solution, you're forced to substitute, simplify, or invert. You find paths you'd never explore if the highway were open. Dr. Seuss wrote Green Eggs and Ham using exactly 50 unique words, a constraint his editor imposed as a challenge. That limitation didn't kill creativity. It produced a classic. Twitter's original 140-character limit didn't stifle expression. It created a new form of communication. Punchy, dense, memorable. The constraint became the medium. The limit became the brand. Limits accelerate decision-making and strengthen voice. When you commit to a set of rules and apply them consistently, patterns emerge. Your work starts to feel coherent. People notice. That's a very you approach. Not because you're repeating yourself, but because your constraints create a recognizable structure. And structure, applied with variation, is what we call style. The lies that keep you stuck. Let's kill the myths that make you afraid to constrain yourself. Unlimited options equal freedom. False. Unlimited options equal paralysis. The paradox of choice is real. The more alternatives you face, the harder it becomes to commit. And without commitment, you produce nothing. Freedom isn't the absence of limits. It's the presence of clear boundaries within which you can move decisively. Rules are for beginners. This one's backwards. Beginners flail because they have no structure. Masters choose sharper rules because they understand that constraints focus energy. The amateur says, I can do anything. The professional says, I will do this one thing exceptionally well under these specific conditions. Mastery is constraint, deliberately chosen and rigorously applied. Constraints kill originality. Wrong. Constraints create surprising paths. When the obvious route is blocked, you're forced to innovate. Substitution breeds novelty. Simplification reveals essence. Inversion uncovers contrarian angles. The constraint doesn't kill the idea. It forces the idea to evolve into something more interesting than it would have been without resistance. The truth is this: bounded search spaces raise the density of viable options. In probability terms, constraints reshape the sampling distribution toward usefulness. You're not generating fewer ideas, you're generating a higher percentage of ideas worth developing. Expected value per attempt goes up, and when expected value rises, throughput accelerates. Designing constraints you can live with. Here's how you build limits that help instead of hurt. Pick 3 constraints per project. Not 5, not 10, 3. Any more and you're drowning in rules. Any fewer and you're still drifting. Start with scope. Define one core problem and one audience. Not help people be more productive. Try help burned out managers reclaim 30 minutes of deep work per day. Not anyone interested in leadership. Try first-time founders managing their first team. Narrow scope concentrates effort. It eliminates the 1,000 tangents that dilute impact. And narrow problems unlock narrow solutions. Solutions that feel fresh because they're specific. Add style. Choose one metaphor thread or one tone and stick with it for the entire piece. If you're using an ecosystem metaphor, commit. Don't switch to a sports metaphor halfway through. If you're writing with urgency, don't drift into playful. Consistency within a single work creates coherence. The reader doesn't have to reorient. The message lands harder. Finish with time. Set a hard deadline. 24 hours to build a prototype. 90 minutes to draft. 15 minutes to outline. Time scarcity forces decisive choices. You can't polish endlessly when the clock is ticking. You ship the best version you can produce in the time you have, and you move on. And here's the secret. The best version under constraint is often better than the perfect version you'd never finish. Now add one signature constraint, a repeatable brand rule you keep across projects. This is the constraint that becomes your identity. Maybe you always include one inversion of conventional wisdom. Maybe you always use exactly 3 examples, no more, no less. Maybe you always end with a question that reframes the entire piece. The signature constraint is what makes your work recognizable. It's the through line that ties everything together. Keep the signature constraint. Rotate the other 2. Change one per sprint to avoid stagnation. This keeps the system fresh without losing coherence. You're evolving, not abandoning your structure. The rotation protocol. Here's how rotation works in practice. Every sprint, you change exactly one constraint. Not all 3, that's chaos. Not 0, that's stagnation. 1. This week, you write for burned-out managers with an urgent tone and a 90-minute deadline. Next week, you keep the audience and the deadline, but swap urgency for skeptical curiosity. The week after, you keep the tone and the deadline, but switch the audience to first-time founders. Each rotation gives you a new angle without forcing you to rebuild the entire system. Record the effect on speed and quality. Did the new constraint make decisions faster or slower? Did it produce more interesting ideas or more generic ones? Keep what helps, drop what doesn't. The rotation protocol turns constraints into experiments. You're not guessing what works, you're testing. And here's the trick. Translate vague constraints into numbers. Be concise is vague. 500 words maximum is concrete. Use vivid examples is vague. Exactly 3 examples, each under 50 words, is concrete. Numbers make constraints enforceable. You know when you've hit the limit, you know when you've broken the rule, and that clarity accelerates execution. Making constraints stick. Write your constraints at the top of every page. Make them visible. Don't rely on memory. When the rules are in front of you, you can't drift. You can't accidentally violate them. And the act of writing them down reinforces commitment. Use a stopwatch for hard stops. Set it. Start it. When it hits 0, stop, even mid-sentence. Scarcity sparks decisive choices. When you know the clock is running, you don't waste time debating. You pick the best option available and move, and moving beats perfecting. Keep a constraint card, 4 inches by 6 inches. Write your 3 constraints and your signature constraint. Laminate it if you're serious. Keep it next to your workspace. Glance at it before every session. The card becomes a ritual, a reminder, an anchor, and rituals reduce friction. What success looks like. Good looks like faster decisions, 10% more ideas shipped, and tighter, clearer drafts. You're not wandering anymore, you're executing. The constraint removes the low-value decisions so you can focus energy on the high-value ones. Excellent looks like a 25% cycle time reduction, a recognizable style, and 1 polished prototype per week. People start noticing patterns in your work. They say, "I knew this was yours before I saw the byline." That's when you know the constraints are working. You've built a signature. Best looks like a signature format others copy and 1 flagship concept per quarter with strong audience pull. You're not just producing, you're setting trends. Your constraints have become so effective, so distinctive that others adopt them. That's mastery. When constraints backfire, overly tight, you've constrained yourself into a corner. Every idea feels forced. Every session feels like a grind. Fix. Relax 1 constraint. Keep the other 2. Give yourself breathing room without abandoning structure entirely. Vague limits. You're using constraints, but they're not measurable. Be interesting isn't a constraint. Include exactly 1 surprising statistic is. Fix. Make every constraint concrete. If you can't measure it, rewrite it. Boredom. The same 3 constraints for 12 weeks straight. You're producing, but it feels mechanical. Fix. Rotate a single constraint. Add a surprise rule for 1 sprint. This week, every idea must include a question in the title. Small changes prevent stagnation. Rule creep. You started with 3 constraints. Now you have 7. The overhead is killing the output. Fix. Cap at 3 constraints total. Anything beyond that is a preference, not a rule. Preferences are optional. Rules are non-negotiable. Know the difference. Constraints work. The math is on your side. Bounded search spaces improve expected value. Limits accelerate decisions. Signature rules build identity. But even the sharpest constraints won't help if you're searching the same small territory over and over. What you need next is a way to expand the landscape itself, to connect distant ideas, bridge unrelated domains, and discover the hidden structure that links everything you know. And that structure? It's already there, waiting to be mapped. Chapter 7, Idea Networks. Your best idea isn't hiding in the cluster you're mining. It's sitting 2 connections away in territory you haven't explored yet. You've been working the same vein for months, maybe years. You know your domain. You've read the books, followed the thought leaders, absorbed the frameworks. You're producing volume, remixing smart, running the loop. But the ideas are starting to feel familiar, predictable, safe. Here's what you're missing. Your next breakthrough lives at the intersection of what you know and what you don't. It's the collision between distant clusters, the bridge between unrelated domains, the hidden structure that connects everything you've learned but never thought to combine. And the only way to find it is to map the network. This chapter teaches you to see your ideas as a graph, a web of nodes and connections where proximity reveals opportunity and distance reveals novelty. You'll learn to spot bridges, exploit shortcuts, and navigate the latent space where surface differences hide deep similarities. And once you can see the network, you can engineer the collisions that produce outliers. Why networks multiply value? Here's the truth most creators never grasp. Networks multiply recombination opportunities. When you connect two clusters, you don't just add their value, you multiply it. Every idea in cluster A can now combine with every idea in cluster B. The math is exponential, not linear, and exponential growth is what separates prolific creators from everyone else. Your next breakthrough sits 2 weak ties away. A weak tie is a connection you haven't explored yet, a domain you've glanced at but never studied, a mechanism you've noticed but never applied, an audience you've considered but never addressed. Weak ties deliver novelty because they pull you out of your echo chamber. They force you into unfamiliar territory where the obvious solutions don't work and the surprising ones emerge. Map it, and you can manage it. When your ideas exist only in your head, they're invisible. You can't see the gaps. You can't spot the bridges. You can't identify the high-degree nodes, the concepts that connect to everything else and unlock massive recombination potential. But when you sketch the network, even crudely, the structure becomes visible. And visible structure is steerable structure. The lies that keep you isolated. Let's dismantle the myths that keep you stuck in one cluster. Stick to your niche. This advice sounds wise. It's not. Niches ossify without fresh inputs. When you only consume content from your domain, you start recycling the same ideas everyone else is recycling. You lose the edge. You become predictable. The creators who break through aren't the ones who go deepest into a single niche. They're the ones who bridge multiple niches and synthesize insights no one else can see. Serendipity can't be engineered. False. Serendipity can be invited. You can't control when a breakthrough happens, but you can control the conditions that make breakthroughs more likely. Scheduling weak tie hours, time dedicated to consuming inputs from unfamiliar fields, increases the probability of collision. Planning cluster jumps, deliberately combining distant domains, forces the intersections where novelty lives. Serendipity isn't magic, it's probability management. Only experts network ideas well. Wrong. Structure beats status. You don't need a PhD to spot a shared mechanism between two domains. You don't need decades of experience to notice that feedback loops show up in ecosystems, markets, and team dynamics. What you need is a willingness to look for patterns across boundaries instead of staying inside them. And that's a choice, not a credential. The truth is this: dense local links speed iteration, and sparse long links deliver novelty. The best networks combine both. You need tight clusters where you can iterate fast, refining, testing, improving within a known domain. And you need bridges to distant clusters where you can discover fresh angles, import foreign mechanisms, and escape local maxima. That's the small world structure, and it's what you're about to build. Sketching your concept graph. Start by mapping your clusters. Grab a blank page or open a whiteboard app. Sketch 5 to 7 circles, each representing a major theme or domain you work in. Maybe it's storytelling, systems thinking, behavior change, design, and leadership. Maybe it's productivity, creativity, decision-making, and communication. The labels don't matter as much as the act of naming them. You're externalizing what's been implicit. Inside each cluster, list your top 10 ideas. Not every idea you've ever had, just the ones that feel central, the ones you return to, the ones that connect to other concepts. Circle the densest nodes, the ideas that link to multiple other ideas within the same cluster. These are your hubs. They're the concepts with the highest recombination potential inside their domain. Now look across clusters. This is where it gets interesting. Find the bridges, the mechanisms, principles, or structures that show up in multiple clusters even though the surface topics look unrelated. Feedback loops appear in systems thinking and behavior change. Constraints show up in design and creativity. Incentives drive both leadership and decision-making. Label these shared mechanisms. Draw lines connecting the clusters they bridge. The goal isn't a perfect map. The goal is a visible structure you can navigate. You're not trying to capture every idea you've ever had. You're trying to see the topology, where the clusters are dense, where the gaps are wide, where the bridges already exist, and where new bridges could be built. Finding the shortcuts. Here's where the network starts working for you. Look for cluster pairs that are far apart, domains you've never consciously connected, storytelling and systems thinking, behavior change and design, leadership and creativity. The farther the distance, the higher the novelty potential. Now plan a jump. Pick one distant pair per week. Your jump prompt is simple. Combine one cluster with a far one. Create 3 title-ready ideas from the collision. Don't force it. Don't manufacture connections that don't exist. Instead, ask, what shared structure links these domains? What mechanism appears in both, even if the language is different? What role in cluster A maps onto what role in cluster B? This is latent space thinking. You're not moving by surface features, topic, jargon, examples. You're moving by deep structure, function, mechanism, narrative role. And deep structure is where the surprising high-value recombinations live. Here's a quick exercise you can run right now. Choose 2 distant clusters from your map. Write the sentence, X behaves like Y because more gore, using structural roles, not surface similarities. For example, high-performing teams behave like mature ecosystems because both rely on specialized roles, efficient resource cycling, and resilience through diversity. Or, creative breakthroughs behave like phase transitions because both require accumulating energy below a threshold before a sudden, irreversible shift occurs. Produce 3 bisociations, 3 structural metaphors linking your chosen clusters. Keep the strongest. That's your seed for a new idea, a new angle, a new piece of work that no one else in either domain is producing. Scheduling the jumps. Make cluster jumps a weekly ritual. Every Monday, pick a distant pair. Every Friday, review what the jump produced. Did it generate usable ideas? Did it shift your perspective on a stalled project? Did it reveal a gap in your thinking you didn't know existed? Tag every idea with a triad: topic, mechanism, audience. This makes the network searchable. When you're looking for ideas about decision-making, you can filter by topic. When you're looking for ideas that use feedback loops as a mechanism, you can filter by mechanism. When you're looking for ideas aimed at first-time founders, you can filter by audience. The triad turns your idea collection into a queryable database. Use weak tie hours. Block 90 minutes per week to consume inputs from unfamiliar fields. Read a paper from a domain you've never studied. Watch a documentary about a topic you know nothing about. Listen to a podcast outside your usual rotation. The goal isn't to become an expert. The goal is to import foreign mechanisms, metaphors, and structures you can transplant into your own clusters. Keep bridges in a separate list. Every time you spot a shared mechanism across clusters, write it down. Review the list monthly. Some bridges will feel obvious in hindsight, others will surprise you. And the act of reviewing reinforces the habit of looking for connections instead of staying siloed. What mastery looks like. Good looks like 1 cross-cluster idea per month that's usable and new perspectives that shift stalled projects. You're not stuck in one domain anymore. You're pulling insights from multiple fields and synthesizing them into something fresh. Excellent looks like weekly bridge concepts, new collaborations per month, and a noticeable jump in originality feedback. People start saying, "I've never seen anyone combine these ideas before." That's when you know the network is working. You're operating in territory others aren't exploring. Best looks like a stable flow of outlier ideas, a defensible cross-domain niche, and invitations to rooms you previously couldn't access. You've built a reputation for synthesis, for bridging, for seeing connections others miss. And that reputation opens doors, speaking invitations, collaboration requests, opportunities that only come to people who think across boundaries. When the network breaks down, echo chambers, you're consuming inputs, but they're all from the same cluster. You're reading 10 books on productivity and 0 books on anything else. Fix, enforce a 30% rule. 30% of your inputs must come from domains outside your core clusters. Force the diversity. Confusing maps. You've sketched 20 clusters and the graph looks like spaghetti. Fix, cap at 7 clusters. If you have more, merge overlaps or prune the least active ones. Simplicity beats completeness. A clean map you actually use beats a comprehensive map you ignore. Overbridging noise. You're generating cross-cluster ideas, but they're incoherent Frankenstein concepts. Fix. Pass every bridge through your constraints from the previous chapter. Add a unifying purpose sentence. Structure the collision so it produces coherence, not chaos. Orphan ideas. You've generated ideas that don't fit any existing cluster. They're interesting but homeless. Fix. Park them in a latent lot, a separate list for ideas that don't have a cluster yet. Revisit during hot blocks. Some will find homes, others will seed entirely new clusters. The network is real. The bridges exist. The shortcuts are waiting. But even the richest network won't help if you can't decide which ideas to develop and which to discard. What you need next is a filter, a way to separate signal from noise fast, surface the head of the distribution, and focus your energy on the few ideas that actually matter. And that filter? It's sharper than you think. Chapter 8, Sharp Curation. You're drowning in options. 30 ideas a day, maybe more. Clusters mapped, bridges built, constraints applied, the engine is running, the volume is there. But here's the problem. You can't develop everything. You can't ship everything, and trying to keep everything alive is killing your momentum. Quantity without curation equals clutter, and clutter paralyzes. You need a filter, a way to separate signal from noise fast, surface the few ideas that actually matter, and kill the rest without guilt. This chapter teaches you to prune ruthlessly and champion decisively. Because the truth is this, most ideas are average, a few are extraordinary, and your job isn't to save them all, it's to find the extraordinary ones and give them everything. The mechanism is simpler than you think. 2 passes, 3 criteria, 1 decision per week, and a small insurance policy for the ideas that might surprise you later. Why pruning multiplies power? Here's what most creators miss. Pruning increases average quality and confidence. When you cut the bottom half, the remaining ideas aren't just better, they're visibly better. The signal-to-noise ratio jumps. The choice becomes obvious, and obvious choices happen fast. Clear criteria ends circular debates. Without criteria, every decision becomes a negotiation between gut feel, mood, and fear. This one feels safer. That one feels more interesting. What if I'm wrong? The debate loops endlessly because there's no shared standard. But when you name your criteria, utility, surprise, feasibility, and score against them, the debate ends. The numbers decide, and numbers don't care about your mood. And here's the part that surprises people. Killing ideas doesn't hurt. It helps. Every idea you cut is energy you can redirect toward the winners. Every no is a yes to something better. The guilt you feel? That's sunk cost fallacy whispering. Ignore it. The idea you kill today wasn't going to become great tomorrow. It was going to sit in your backlog, draining attention, creating noise. Cut it. Move on. Ship the winners. The lies that keep you stuck. Let's dismantle the myths that make you afraid to prune. Gut is enough. Your gut is good at pattern recognition. It's terrible at probability estimation. It overweights recent ideas, familiar formats, and emotionally charged concepts. It underweights quiet ideas with asymmetric upside. Gut is a starting point, not an end point. Guided gut, intuition plus criteria, is better. You still trust your instincts, but you test them against a standard. Everything deserves a chance. False. Resources are finite. Time is finite. Attention is finite. Every idea you keep alive competes with every other idea for those resources. And most ideas aren't worth the cost. They're not bad. They're just average. And average ideas, developed fully, produce average results. You don't need more average. You need more extraordinary. And extraordinary only emerges when you concentrate resources on the top of the distribution. If I cut now, I'll miss a gem. This one's seductive. But here's the truth. Options preserve upside. You don't have to kill an idea completely. You can park it, you can keep it on a low-maintenance list. You can revisit it later when conditions change. The key is to distinguish between develop now and keep as option. Most ideas belong in the second category. A few belong in the first, and confusing the two is what creates clutter. The truth is this. Power laws guarantee concentration of value at the head. A few ideas will dominate your results. The rest will contribute noise. Good systems surface the head fast, and surfacing the head requires cutting the tail. The two-pass filter. Here's how you turn 100 ideas into one winner without drowning in analysis. 2 passes. First pass is triage. Second pass is head-to-head. Total time, under 30 minutes per week. Pass 1 is fast and brutal. Take every idea from the past week. Score each one on 3 dimensions: utility, surprise, feasibility. 1 to 5 on each. Utility: does this solve a real problem for a specific audience? Surprise: does this offer a fresh angle or challenge conventional thinking? Feasibility: can you actually build, test, or ship this in a reasonable time frame? Add the scores. Anything below 9 gets killed immediately. No debate, no second chances, no but what if. Kill it. You just cut the bottom 50% in under 10 minutes. The remaining ideas aren't perfect, but they're above average, and above average is the floor you're building on. Now tag the top 10%. These are the ideas that scored 12 or higher, 4s and 5s across the board. These are your advanced candidates. They're not winners yet, but they're worth a closer look. Pass 2 is deliberate. Take your advanced candidates and compare them head-to-head on a single page. Not in your head, not across multiple docs, one page, all titles visible. Now ask, which one would I actually want to develop this week? Which one has the highest expected value? The best combination of impact if it works and probability that it works. Select one winner. That's your prototype for the week. Schedule it within 72 hours, not someday, not when I have time. Within 72 hours. The deadline forces execution. Move 2 near misses to an options list. These are ideas that scored well but didn't win the head-to-head. They're not dead, they're dormant. You'll revisit them monthly. If conditions change, new data, new audience signal, new constraint that makes them easier, you can promote them. But for now, they're parked. Low maintenance. High optionality. Running the exercise. Let's make this concrete. Take 20 ideas from this week. Run past 1. Score each on utility, surprise, feasibility. Kill anything below 9. You should have 10 or fewer left. Tag the top 2 or 3, the 12s and above. Run past 2. Write the top candidates on a single page. Compare them directly. Ask, which one would I bet on? Which one has the clearest path to impact? Which one excites me enough to push through the inevitable friction of development? Pick one. Schedule a prototype session within 72 hours, block the time, name the deliverable, make it real. Move the near misses to your options list. Label them with the date and the score. Revisit monthly. Some will age well, others will fade. That's fine. The list isn't a graveyard, it's a reservoir. Making curation stick. Tricks matter. Blind the titles in pass 1 to reduce bias. Shuffle the order. Don't let recency or familiarity skew the scores. You're scoring the idea, not your memory of generating it. Name your criteria and keep them constant for 1 month. Don't change utility to impact halfway through. Don't swap surprise for novelty. Consistency enables comparison. If you change criteria every week, you can't track whether your hit rate is improving. Lock the criteria. Review monthly. Adjust only if the data says adjust. Time box decisions to avoid analysis paralysis. Pass 1, 15 minutes maximum. Pass 2, 10 minutes maximum. If you can't decide in 10 minutes, flip a coin. Seriously. The cost of a wrong decision is lower than the cost of no decision. Ship something, learn, adjust, repeat. What success looks like. Good looks like 2 to 3 high-quality picks per month. Less clutter and a clear rationale for every choice. You're not guessing anymore. You're deciding based on criteria. And criteria-based decisions feel lighter because the system is carrying the weight. Excellent looks like a weekly winner with a scheduled prototype and a noticeable rise in external feedback quality. People start saying, "This is your best work yet." That's when you know the filter is working. You're concentrating energy on the ideas that actually matter, and the results are visible. Best looks like a portfolio of compounding bets and a consistent upward trend in hit rate and traction. You're not just shipping, you're shipping winners. Your batting average is climbing, your audience is growing, your opportunities are multiplying, and the system is running itself. When curation breaks down, reviewer bias. You're scoring ideas, but you're unconsciously favoring the ones you generated most recently or the ones that feel safest. Fix. Shuffle the order before scoring. Blind the titles. If possible, involve a second rater, someone who can score independently and compare results. Bias is invisible until you measure it. Overculling. You're killing 90% instead of 50%. Your options list is empty. You're shipping, but you've lost the insurance policy. Fix. Keep 10% as options with minimal maintenance. Review them monthly. Don't develop them. Don't obsess over them. Just keep them visible in case conditions shift. Analysis paralysis. You're running 3 scoring rounds, debating criteria, tweaking scores, second-guessing decisions. The overhead is killing the output. Fix. Limit to 2 scoring rounds maximum. Enforce a decision deadline. If you can't decide by the deadline, default to the highest scoring idea and move on. Moving goalposts. You're changing criteria mid-month because the current criteria aren't surfacing the ideas you want. Fix. Lock criteria for 30 days. Review monthly only. If the criteria aren't working, adjust them at the review. But don't change them mid-cycle. Consistency is what makes the data meaningful. Curation works. The filter is real. The power law is on your side. But even the sharpest filter won't help if you don't act. You've built the engine. You've mapped the network. You've installed the loop. You've designed the constraints. You've learned to curate. Now there's only one thing left: integration. The final chapter shows you how to lock all 8 mechanisms into a single system that runs daily, compounds weekly, and scales indefinitely. And the first step? Simpler than you think. Chapter 9, Go Infinite. You've reached the end. But this isn't where the journey stops. It's where it accelerates. Everything you've learned up to this point has been preparation. The formula gave you the levers. Volume power taught you to produce without hesitation. Smart Remix showed you how to multiply variety from a handful of ingredients. Edge Loop balanced discovery and delivery. Useful Limits sharpened your focus. Idea Networks expanded your search space. Sharp Curation surfaced the winners. Now comes the part that matters most: integration, locking all 8 mechanisms into a single system that runs daily, compounds weekly, and scales indefinitely. This chapter isn't theory, it's activation. You're going to walk away with a clear first step, a rhythm you can sustain, and a vision of what's possible when systems replace superstition. Because here's the truth: the slope gets easier as you climb. The first week feels like work. The first month feels like momentum. The first year feels like mastery. And mastery isn't magic. It's compounding leverage applied in the right order over time. The machine you've built. Let's recap what you now control. The formula translates creativity into 4 measurable levers: attempts, combinations, time, and balance. You're not hoping for ideas, you're engineering them. Ideas out equals attempts times combinations times time times balance. Adjust any lever and the output shifts. Adjust all 4 and you're not creating, you're manufacturing. Volume, then curation. Exploration, then exploitation. You produce 30 ideas a day using sprints, prompts, and micro deadlines. You separate generation from judgment so momentum never stalls. You run the exploration-exploitation loop at the edge of chaos, 60% wild search, 40% focused refinement, and you adjust weekly based on hit rate. You're toggling between modes with explicit rules, not wandering based on mood. Constraints and networks as force multipliers. You've designed 3 constraints per project: scope, style, time, and 1 signature constraint that brands your voice. You've mapped your concept graph, identified bridges between distant clusters, and scheduled weekly cluster jumps to force collisions. You're not searching the same small territory anymore. You're navigating a network that multiplies recombination opportunities with every new connection. And you've installed a 2-pass filter that turns noise into signal fast. Score on utility, surprise, feasibility, kill the bottom 50%, tag the top 10%, compare head-to-head, pick 1 winner per week, move near misses to options, ship relentlessly. That's the machine. 8 interlocking mechanisms, each one amplifies the others, and the whole system runs on 4 numbers you can track in under 5 minutes per day. What you control now. Here's what changes when you stop waiting for lightning and start running systems. You control the levers. You don't wait for inspiration. You don't plead with the muse. You don't hope that today will be the day the ideas flow. You set the attempt target, block the time, run the sprints, and the ideas come. Not because you're talented, because the math works. Confidence from repeatable results, not lucky breaks. When you ship one prototype per week for 12 weeks straight, something shifts. You stop doubting. You stop wondering if you're really creative. You know you are because the evidence is undeniable. The portfolio grows, the feedback arrives, the opportunities multiply, and confidence built on evidence is unshakable. Clear language to align collaborators and stakeholders. When someone asks, "How do you generate so many ideas?" you don't shrug and say, "I don't know. They just come to me." You say, "I run 3 15-minute sprints per day, rotate prompts to avoid repetition, and score on utility, surprise, and feasibility." That clarity builds credibility. People trust systems more than they trust mystery, and trust opens doors. What this does for your relationships. Faster cycles mean clearer asks and quicker feedback. When you can produce a prototype in 72 hours, you don't need to guess what your audience wants. You ship, you measure, you adjust. You ask for feedback early and often because you're not precious about any single idea. You've got 30 more coming tomorrow. This speed transforms collaboration. You're not the bottleneck anymore. You're the accelerant. Shared criteria reduce friction and rework. When you and your collaborators agree on the scoring dimensions, utility, surprise, feasibility, the debates end. You're not arguing about taste. You're evaluating against a standard, and standards scale. You can onboard new collaborators faster. You can delegate curation. You can build a team that thinks like you without needing to be you. Reliability builds trust, and trust unlocks bigger rooms. When you ship consistently, weekly prototypes, monthly flagship releases, people notice. They stop wondering if you'll deliver. They start wondering what you'll deliver next. And that shift is everything. Reliable creators get invited to early conversations, bigger projects, higher stakes collaborations. Unreliable creators get left behind, no matter how talented they are. What you can achieve now. Daily idea flow on demand. You wake up, block 90 minutes, run 3 sprints, and produce 30 titled, one-sentence concepts. No drama, no anxiety, no waiting for the mood to strike. The system runs whether you feel inspired or not, and over time, the system creates the feeling of inspiration because momentum is its own motivation. Weekly prototypes. You pick one winner from your curation filter, schedule a prototype session within 72 hours, and ship every week, without fail. That's 52 prototypes per year, 52 chances to learn, iterate, and discover what works. Most creators ship 5 prototypes per year and wonder why they're not making progress. You're shipping 10 times that. The math is on your side. Monthly flagship releases. Once a month, you take your best prototype from the past 4 weeks and polish it into a signature piece. Something you're proud to attach your name to. Something that represents your best thinking, your clearest writing, your sharpest insight. 12 flagship releases per year. That's a portfolio. That's a body of work. That's a reputation. A defensible creative identity grounded in systems. You're not the person who had that one viral hit. You're the person who ships every week, explores unexpected combinations, and always delivers fresh angles. That identity is defensible because it's systematic. Others can copy your ideas, but they can't copy your engine. And the engine is what compounds. How the system compounds. Here's where it gets beautiful. Prompts get sharper. After 100 sprints, you know which prompts trigger the best ideas. You've tested audience prompts, medium prompts, constraint prompts, metaphor prompts. You've logged what works. You've dropped what doesn't. Your prompt library becomes a curated toolkit that accelerates every session. Constraints become brand assets. Your signature constraint, the repeatable rule you keep across projects, starts showing up in feedback. People say, "I love how you always invert conventional wisdom," or "your use of one central metaphor makes everything so clear." The constraint isn't limiting you anymore. It's defining you. And definition is what makes you memorable. Networks deepen. Every cluster jump adds a bridge. Every bridge unlocks new recombinations. After 6 months, your concept graph is dense with connections. Ideas that seemed unrelated now link through shared mechanisms. You're spotting patterns others miss because you've mapped the terrain, and the denser the network, the richer the recombinations. Curation speeds up. After scoring 100 ideas, you can eyeball utility, surprise, and feasibility in seconds. You don't need to deliberate. You don't need to second guess. The pattern recognition is automatic, and when curation is fast, the bottleneck disappears. You're not stuck deciding, you're shipping. Hit rate climbs with fewer cycles. In month 1, you might need to produce 100 ideas to get one standout. In month 6, you need 50. In month 12, you need 20. The system is learning. Your prompts are sharper, your constraints are tighter, your network is richer, your curation is faster. The same 90 minutes yields better results. That's compounding. That's mastery. Your first move. Set tomorrow's attempt target. Write it down. 30 ideas, 3 sprints, 15 minutes each, non-negotiable. Don't wait until you feel ready. Don't wait until you've cleared your schedule. Don't wait until conditions are perfect. Block 90 minutes tomorrow. Same time, same place. Make it a standing appointment. Choose 3 primitives and 1 signature constraint. Audience, problem, mechanism, or medium, tone, payoff. Pick 3, name them clearly, write them on a card, and choose 1 signature constraint, 1 repeatable rule you'll keep across every project for the next month. Always include 1 inversion. Always use exactly 1 metaphor. Always end with a question. Pick 1. Commit. Run the first sprint tomorrow. Set a timer, 15 minutes, 10 ideas, titles plus 1 sentence each. No judging, no polishing, just produce. When the timer hits 0, stop. Tag your top 2. That's it. You've started. The truth about what happens next. The first week, you'll doubt. You'll wonder if the ideas are good enough. You'll question whether the system is working. Ignore the doubt. The system doesn't care about your feelings. It cares about your actions. Run the sprints. Log the counts. Trust the math. The first month, you'll see patterns. You'll notice which prompts trigger the best ideas. You'll spot themes worth pursuing. You'll start to feel the momentum. The blank page won't scare you anymore because you have a process that fills it. The first quarter, you'll ship weekly prototypes, monthly flagship releases, measurable traction, external feedback that says this is different, this is good, keep going, and that feedback will fuel the next quarter. The first year, you'll compound. Your prompts will be sharper, your constraints will be tighter, your network will be denser, your curation will be faster, and the same 90 minutes that produced 30 rough ideas in month 1 will produce 50 polished concepts in month 12. That's the slope getting easier. That's the system working. The final truth. You don't need more talent. You don't need more time. You don't need more inspiration. You need more attempts, more combinations, more structure, more discipline, and all of that is within your control right now. Refuse the drought. Build the well today. The well is the formula, the sprints, the constraints, the network, the filter. The well is the system that produces ideas on demand, ships prototypes on schedule, and compounds results over time. Dig the well now. Fill it daily. Draw from it relentlessly. Start the counter, run the loop. Trust the math. The counter is your attempt target. The loop is exploration, then exploitation. The math is probability. More trials, higher odds. You're not gambling anymore. You're engineering outcomes. Make something only you could combine, then ship it this week. Take 2 distant clusters from your network. Force a collision. Apply your signature constraint. Run it through the filter. Pick the winner. Prototype it within 72 hours. Ship it. Measure the response. Adjust. Repeat. That's the system. That's the machine. That's how you go infinite. The muse doesn't decide anymore. You do. The calendar doesn't control you anymore. You control it. The blank page doesn't mock you anymore. You fill it. Every day, every week, every month, without fail, without drama, without waiting. You've built the engine. Now run it. The ideas are waiting. The prototypes are waiting. The flagship releases are waiting. The reputation is waiting. The opportunities are waiting. And they're all on the other side of one decision. Start tomorrow. Set the timer, run the sprint, ship the work, repeat until infinite. Go.